Hey friends, it's Melvin. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Here's just a few quick things I wanted to notify you guys about before we get started. First up, very soon, new episodes will be releasing Wednesday mornings rather than Tuesday. So don't panic if you don't see a new episode on Tuesday. Just wait a little longer and you'll see it in your feed. Second, we've introduced a mailbag. Check those show notes and toward the bottom you'll see a mailbag link. You'll then be able to text us any questions you might have about movies, the movie industry, or any movie/Christian related questions you might have. Then we'll respond in a future episode, so send us your questions now. Up next, Patreon polls, which are available to Patreon supporters at the $3 tier or higher, have been updated. Supporters can now suggest films or shows to be reviewed at the end of each month. The two most liked submissions will become the options for the Patreon poll, so if you want to hear us talk about your favorite movie or show, join our Patreon and start campaigning. And lastly, whether you're a new or longtime listener, please consider writing a review or rating the Cinematic Doctrine podcast on iTunes and Spotify. Apart from financially supporting on Patreon, these are the two most helpful ways to support the show. And that's it. Enjoy the episode. Hi, my name is Melvin, and he's still Baby Yoda to me. Welcome to Cinematic Doctrine, a Christian movie podcast that seeks to encourage and equip Christians to engage and reform the culture of cinema. In this episode, Daniel and I are joined by Derrick and John from ShatterCast to talk about Disney Plus's The Mandalorian Season 2. In a year without movies, film fans had television. In a year with television, everyone anticipated the release of The Mandalorian Season 2. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't one of my most anticipated projects of 2020, and I think it's safe to say it didn't disappoint. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, we have a lot to get into with this episode. Right off the bat, we get into one of Derrick's famous positive and negative lists, while Daniel, John, and I jump off of that list with our own comments. We also celebrate the Mandalorian series format for the breathing room it provides, the expansive Star Wars universe, as opposed to the limited runtime of a 2-hour film. Then, spoilers run free as we get into the nitty-gritty of The Mandalorian, discuss Episode 2's wild Baby Yoda antics, geek out over Episode 5's star cameo, and talk at length about Episode 7's great introduction of a much-needed nuance to the Star Wars universe. And yes, of course we talk about the end of the series and share our speculation on what Season 3 will bring. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to give ShatterCast a visit. Without further ado, here's our discussion on The Mandalorian Season 2. Welcome back, all you party people. ShatterCast is back on the podcast. That's like my most podcast introduction I've ever done.
Hey.
Anyways, welcome back, ShatterCast. You guys were on for our Avengers episode back in summer, in the middle of quarantine. Can you believe it? Now we are at the end of 2020, and we're going to be talking about The Mandalorian. This is ridiculous.
That's right.
John, why don't you tell us about ShatterCast before we get started?
Yeah, so I'm the host of a podcast known as ShatterCast. Derrick is with me here. He is the executive director, president, and CEO of Shattered Studios.
My title just keeps getting longer.
It does.
Looks good on LinkedIn.
A ministry that whose mission is to share hope and faith through the arts. And ShatterCast is one arm of that ministry where we talk about our love of board games, movies, TV shows, and bring it back to the faith that all of us on the podcast share.
Awesome. Very cool. Great intro, John. And yeah, Derrick here again. Super excited. And just want to say I'm super excited to be back on the podcast with Melvin and with Dan for the first time. I've been learning a lot about Dan. I won't share any stories right now, but we got some blackmail material for you.
Wow. I really hope that we can draw this back to talking about The Undertaker at some point.
As all episodes end. Yes.
Yeah. That's right. Well, today we're going to be talking about Mandalorian Season 2. Now, if you are listening, don't worry. Right now, we're not going to jump into spoilers. We will later, but not right away. So if you're worried about spoilers, we will warn you before we jump into that. So Mandalorian, if you aren't aware, was created by Jon Favreau, most notably known currently for the majority of the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But he's been in Hollywood writing and producing and even acting for quite a long time, right?
Oh,
and so he's joined by Dave Filoni, who worked on the animated shows that came out years and years ago for Star Wars. So Clones, the Clone Wars and Rebels. Mandalorian as a show, Pedro Pascal plays the Mandalorian, or Din Djarin. You've also got Carl Weathers, who's a fantastic actor who plays a guy named Greef Karga. You got Giancarlo Esposito from Breaking Bad fame, who's kind of the current antagonist in the show, and Gina Carano, who's a wonderful star in the show as well. And Mandalorian Season 2, I want to kind of give this non-spoiler 30,000 foot overview, right? So in Season 1, Mandalorian was tasked by his group to return the child to the Jedi, right? And
Baby
so our
Yoda.
protagonist,
Baby Yoda.
or the child, but yeah, Baby Yoda, as everyone loves to refer to our little green friend, to set out to return him to the Jedi, right? So he starts off Season 2 searching for other Mandalorians, thinking that the Mandalorians might be able to lead him to the Jedi. And Jon Favreau, in an interview, he said, I have it written down here so that I don't misquote him. He said,
Nice.
The new season is about introducing a larger story in the world. The stories become less isolated, yet each episode has its own flavor, and hopefully we're bringing a lot more scope to the show. Now, later when we talk about spoilers, I think we're going to be able to say that they achieved that exactly what they were looking for.
Most definitely.
I think each episode, it does a fantastic job of driving Din Djarin closer to his goal, while also constantly introducing compelling new side characters. And it even brings some of our Season 1 characters to Season 2. Some side characters I wasn't expecting, but I won't say just yet.
Mm-hmm.
But all that to say, I think Season 2 did a wonderful job of remembering where it came from in Season 1, building out the Star Wars universe that we see in Mandalorian. But at no point was there an episode that didn't advance the main plot. And that's one of the things I really appreciated. There really wasn't a filler episode. So that's my kind of overview of Season 2, because I can't actually tell you anything about Season 2.
Yeah. It's amazing how almost right away there's spoilers, but I guess that's it's normal for a TV show. We cover movies on here, so I'm not used to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's so funny. Derek, what do we got for our content awareness here?
Whoop, whoop. All right, so guys, The Mandalorian is rated TV-14. Now, there's no detailed content certificate, so we got you, fam. We made one up for you. So here you go.
Nice.
Just keep in mind, there is some intense violence and peril at times, including a lot of gun action, some weapon violence. There's some censoring and implied uses of graphic violence, again, including some blasters, bludgeoning to the face, stabbing, slicing, and even some self-harm. There's lying and deception throughout the series. Sometimes there are some complex moral situations that involve some gray areas. And some serious notes, there is some torture and some terror involving both creatures and people, so be cautious of that. And there is some implied language, including sci-fi cursing, which would be curse words we probably wouldn't use here in the real world, but it stands as cursing for them. So there is some stuff that people might find a little bit disturbing, especially in Season 2, Episode 2, involving some Baby Yoda stuff and some shenanigans he gets into. The internets were in an uproar about that. So
I totally forgot about that till right now.
Yeah. 100%.
Which I just want to say, I was not online at that time, so I can't wait for you guys to fill me in about that.
Oh man,
my
I
gosh.
have no idea how people
memes.
felt about it.
Oh,
there's a lot going on. We'll get to that.
Suddenly so excited.
Wow. See, I'm learning more about Dan every year. He's excited about this.
It feels
stuff.
yeah. I relish the next day on Twitter. There's all these articles of here's why Baby Yoda is problematic now. It's just like, oh no. So only 2 episodes in. So yeah, if you like what you've heard so far, for some reason, leave a review on iTunes, Podchaser, wherever you listen. Follow our social media, Facebook page, or Twitter and Instagram, and join our Facebook group titled Cinematic Doctrine Group. If you're requesting to join, please mention that you know us from the podcast. Check out our other shows under the same feed, Trailer Talk and Monthly Movie News, which is our movie culture content. Also, feel free to check out our website, cinematicdoctrine.com, which includes written content and essays from our various contributors. And also support us on Patreon. For as low as $3 a month, you gain access to our exclusive voting, decide which movies we review in the future, as well as an extra podcast called The Pre-Show.
And check out ShatterCast.
Woo-hoo.
They do literally everything.
Yeah.
It's like ridiculous. You guys cover movies, games, board games.
Big interview with a guy, Andrew Lowen, who made a really cool game called Deliverance. You play as mighty angels and you fight demons. Really cool. We do a Lord of the Rings role-playing game session that John leads. A lot of fun. So
much cool stuff.
yeah, website is shatterstudios.net, facebook.com/shatterthedarkness. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/shatterstudios. Bunch of really exciting stuff coming up, including we're about to launch our own Patreon.
Nice. Very exciting.
And a couple other surprises and details in there. So
Yeah, that's been a long time coming.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we were talking prior to the show how we wanted to go about talking The Mandalorian. Now, as always, our first section never covers spoilers, so you'll be safe here. However, we don't need to talk about spoilers for Derrick to give us one of his lovely love and hate lists.
Yes.
Where he talks about the things that he loves, and he also talks about the things that he hates. And John, who apparently loves that Derrick hates things, is going to have a blast here. So what's number one on your love list?
Sure. Backed by fan requests, the positive and negative list. Here we go.
The people wanted more.
I'll do my best to let you get through the list before I interject and tell you what you're wrong.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Again, I'm doing this for the fans. The fans like this, so here we go.
That's what I've heard too. Yeah.
Okay, my mom likes it. Leave me alone, guys. All right, so my first positive is just general. I am enjoying the series. For me, it's the best version of Star Wars we've gotten in this kind of current generation, with the possible exception of Rogue One, which I really enjoyed, and The Force Awakens, the first of the sequels. I thought that was pretty good. But for me, again, this is kind of the best version of Star Wars for me. So yeah, that's just my first general positive. Should I keep going, or do you guys want to comment on that?
No, I mean, I agree. I think as far as the Disney Star Wars stuff is concerned that I've watched, because I haven't watched season 8 or season 7 Clone Wars, because I haven't even gotten through season 2 of Clone Wars. It is this stuff that I've enjoyed the most in terms of what they've produced, and I'm just really thankful that they keep throwing money at Dave Filoni to just keep doing this, and I hope that they keep doing more, because I just think he, as an executive producer, it's funny, like we kind of look to him as being the guy who's saving Star Wars right now, but I mean Jon Favreau's on that too. They're just they seem to have such a good sense to it, to handling this massive universe without exploiting fandom culture in terms of things we know, while also kind of peppering in things like that get people excited. But yeah, it's amazing how like The Mandalorian just seems to be like just not just a good Star Wars show, but like a good show on its own. I feel like you could show it to just somebody who's never seen Star Wars, and they would be totally capable of enjoying every little thing about it. So yeah, I completely agree with you on that one, Derrick.
Yeah, I'd agree as well. I think for me, when I think of why I enjoy Mandalorian so much, I think a big part of that is Star Wars as a universe is so massive that it lends itself to like a slow burn of a TV show,
like a serial,
versus versus having a movie where you have to tell this complete story in only 2 hours. I mean, they had what, almost 8 hours worth of watching in season 2 that we could do. So I think having that kind of episodic nature makes it easier to tell a story. One of my favorite things about Mandalorian is they take their time. Like there are shots that are slow, where like in season 1, there was one where he walks into a doorway and it feels like an old Western as he just looks over the crowd of people in the tavern and slowly makes his way to the bar. And that's like 25 seconds. You don't do that in movies.
Yeah. Not in modern Star Wars.
Yeah, not in Sure. Star Wars movies. Yeah.
Which I think brings me to my second positive. I think overall it handles the sci-fi and Western genre well. Like there's very few shows that combine those well. I think of Firefly, that kind of has that sci-fi Western going on, and I think The Mandalorian does. And as both Melvin and John, you guys were saying, I think the slow burn of the series for some might be a little off-putting. For me, it was great because one of the things about Star Wars is it is such an expansive universe, and I love the fact that we're spending so much time on just one character and just seeing his story come out. So for me, that's been another huge positive.
One of the great things that I really enjoy about that too is that when we're jumping to different planets, sometimes it's like a planet Mando's never been to. And so they get to do what every great writing class tells you to do, which is if you want to teach an audience about your world, put in a character who doesn't know anything about what's going on. So then when Mando's just asking questions or trying to learn things about where he's going or what he's doing, we're learning with him. And since we're just seeing so much happen, it's just a great way for them to easily do that. Because like, yeah, if you're going over the top with a lot of the fandom Easter eggs and stuff like that, that's no good to people who don't keep up with all of the extra lore that goes on. Because like, why are they going to be excited about like some sort of obscure character if they're just there for a second and that was supposed to be your one exciting thing that scene? But if Mando's coming in and this character is the one who saves them at some time, or is the main character that Mando has to go interact with, not only is it exciting for people who've been longtime fans of the series, it's also actually going to engage people who've never watched Star Wars in their life, because that's part of the story. It's what needs to happen. So yeah, I think it handles that really well too.
I think that brings me to my last major positive. I really enjoyed the relationship growth between Mando and the child. And I know for a fact that some people who had never seen Star Wars before weren't fans. They started watching it because it got such good word of mouth. And one of the reasons they kept watching it is because of that single relationship. And so I think it really did open the fan base up to more people, just because as people were trying to see Mando handle, the child and their relationship grow and where that would go. I think that was a great story hook. That I think appealed to more people than I'm not sure even maybe the writers were thinking. So
yeah,
I just want to make it known that Derrick's list of positives about the show is only 3 long.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised too. Is it really
in the non-spoiler section? Let's be real. There could be more.
Fair. That's fair.
Maybe
There
a
could be
22
more.
spoiler like positives.
Yeah,
correct. And there are 3 other people on this podcast. I didn't want to take it all. And my negative lists are only 3 points as well. See, I keep this consistent,
okay.
keeping it even.
I keep it
That's a
consistent.
good balance.
It's
Yeah,
balanced.
like the Force.
Just
Yeah.
like Anakin.
Yeah, just like Anakin. That's great. I love it.
Yeah, what an even-tempered fellow he is.
Just a good balance of midichlorians across his entire body.
Speaking of Anakin and negatives, should we go into the negative list?
Okay,
Ooh.
sure. Let's do it.
This guy's good with transitions. I like it. I like it.
This is what I do,
Let's
people. This
keep
is what I do.
I don't know if repeating the last statement and then saying "and let's go to" is really a transition.
Hey, that's my bread and butter right
It's
there.
how he says
Don't-
it. It's how he
Don't
says it.
It's true.
Don't tell the fans the secret, man. This is how I do.
Go. Ignore me.
All right, so negatives. I don't mind Mando having an interesting cast of characters. That's one of the reasons I think one of the positives of the series usually. In the second season, especially as I was watching it, I felt like they were introducing a lot of characters and a lot of backdoor pilots for spin-offs for other series. And as we found out with the Disney investment call, that's exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So basically what kind of killed Marvel Phase 2 was the fact that there was are you worried then, Derrick, that they're going to do potentially using Mandalorian as the jump off point for other stuff, kind of like how Marvel Phase 2 was just all about preparing for the next movie rather than focusing on the current one?
I think let's get a little specific because John's going to hop in about Marvel in a second to defend it. I think that
He's
was
not going to let that one slide.
I think that was the issue with the second Avengers movie, Ultron, which overall I liked the movie, but even the director said they were cramming in so much stuff for the other movies. So in that way, I think it is the same. And I think they did that with season 2. I just don't want them to constantly do that. I'm okay with a little bit, and we won't get into spoilers yet of who they introduce, but it was feeling like a bit much. So
Yeah.
You're just dying to see that Frog Lady spinoff, where it's just like it's just the sitcom of this frog.
I play a mobile game called Galaxy of Heroes. We're all hoping we get a Frog Lady character as soon as possible.
Ooh.
To your point, Derrick, I think that's actually a fair knock on Phase 2 of the MCU,
on both Star Wars and Marvel.
And I would, to an extent, I think what we saw happen in season 2 was okay. but that's only because I don't think it took away the substance of the show. We still had a compelling storyline, a compelling season,
Right.
and in my opinion, a fantastic finale. So if they don't cheapen the substance of the show moving forward, I think it's okay. But if it becomes simply, hey, this got really popular, so now let's use it to springboard other shows, then it's going to lose its interest and it's going to lose its fan base pretty quick.
It's like it was on the precipice of being too much, because for the most part, every new character plays into the finale in some way, or it served as a point for I'm just gonna call it Mando, for Mando's like personal journey, where like all these characters that are introduced kind of teach him something about himself in some way and about his own beliefs. So I think that was fine, but it is kind of this like this seeping in of like the cynicism of like creating a franchise where basically every character that's introduced in this show was announced to have their own show coming up forward. And so that does kind of retroactively like dust this little dust on the show that I enjoyed.
That's fair.
But it was up to the line. It was up to the line where every episode is a new character.
If I can put another side to that, I didn't know that some of these characters were getting spin-offs until like literally the very end. But with that in mind, it didn't actually detract from me thinking that may be a possibility. In fact, when we finished the show, I sort of just thought, well, I know they're making other shows, but I don't really know anything about what they're making. So I guess what I mean to say is I'm still like I have that pure enjoyment still intact because I haven't damaged it by reading news about what they're coming out with next.
The 10 Star Wars shows we're gonna
get.
Yeah, I have no idea what's over the corner.
In the interest of still being spoiler free, I will word it this way so those who have seen the show know what I'm talking about. In the 5th episode of season 2, they introduced a character, and the second I saw the character, I was like, "Yeah, there's going to be a show about them."
Okay.
Yeah,
no, I understand.
Same thought.
Yeah, I knew immediately that they had to.
Yeah, I think that was the difference between season 1 and season 2 for me. Season 1, they introduced a lot of characters and they brought them together again for a season finale, but none of, from what I remember, I don't think any of those characters are scheduled to get a spinoff. For season 2, they're introducing some major Star Wars lore people, and you're this is I don't see them inhabiting just a Mandalorian story. I'm pretty guaranteed that they're going to get another spinoff. So, which dovetails into my second negative, which is very closely connected. I think a byproduct of so many characters being introduced is that sometimes the Mando took a backseat in his own show. And again, I'm okay with that sometimes, but it just felt like it was happening. And I agree with Dan, it was right at the edge for me. So again, it didn't necessarily detract for this season for me. Again, I really enjoyed it, but I just want them to be careful with that. So that's my second negative. Third negative, jump right into it. Because they're introducing so many different characters, they're also introducing some characters with many different power levels. I won't say anything more about that because we'll get into spoiler territory later. But it made me realize...
Is this Dragon Ball Z?
Yes, exactly. It made me realize one of the reasons I like The Mandalorian is because he is, and fanboys don't hate me, he's a trained character in a suit of armor. Like, he doesn't have any other special powers. He's got the battle experience, all that stuff. And that's one of the things I love.
And even when he gets better armor, the Beskar armor, he still gets, like, the snot beating out.
Correct. And that's one of the things I love about the series. Like, I sometimes when you introduce higher powered characters, again, I'm trying to be very careful here, you sometimes get into the Superman syndrome where they can become so overpowered that it can overshadow other threats in the show. And one of the things I love about The Mandalorian is that he's facing some real threats and it feels like a real threat. It's like, oh my goodness, how's he going to get out of this situation?
Well, it's like in season 1 when, I forget which episode it's called, but the one Bryce Dallas Howard directed, where it's this small town on like a forest planet, and the big bad that they have is that some pirates took an AT-ST
just
and
one.
are using it to terrorize them. And it's just one.
Yep.
And it's like, if only they had just some death teddy bears around to just help them out. But like,
or Superman.
I'd love that. But it's like, if they have this power creep that gets too over, if this power creep turns out like Wonder Woman 1984, then it's going to be bad because
spoil it
nothing's
for
going to
me.
be scary anymore.
Haven't seen it yet.
It's not spoilers. It's just power creep. It's ridiculous. So I just, and there's a point where it just becomes so much that it's, yeah, the threat's going to be gone, and you're going to be going like, well, if I wanted this, I would go watch the Disney mainline Star Wars films.
Yeah.
We've seen that in the Avengers, to bring that back again. And again, I love the Avengers too, but like if Thor's on your team and Thor's going through so many different power levels, like
Exactly.
I'm like, why isn't Thor doing
If
that?
he can breathe in space, why is he not doing
Why
it?
is Iron Man doing that again? Anyways, let's not live that again. So just to bring this point home, one of the things I love about the show is that the Mandalorian is a great character, and he's facing real threats. The more people you add to his team that of a power level that's higher, the less real those threats get. So just a caution. Again, I enjoyed the season, but just
So is he like the Hawkeye of Mandalorian?
yes.
Okay.
I like Hawkeye, man.
Yeah, Hawkeye's one of my favorites.
His show's going to be sick based on the Matt Fraction comic.
Yeah,
but
I am so excited.
let's say the juxtaposition between like Mandalorian in the last episode, his big threat versus the way some other characters deal with these exact same threats, like the difference of like quote unquote power level, where you have this like very vulnerable character where he's like John Wick, where you believe he's going to win, but he's going to take a beating the whole time. And that's so much more interesting than just a wave of a hand kind of thing. Where...
And we'll talk about that more with spoilers. But you mentioned Hawkeye. One of my favorite lines, and I think it was from Avengers 2, the Ultron's like, I'm just a man with arrows. I don't know why I'm here. And like, that's the perfect description of Hawkeye. And for me, that's the Mandalorian. Like, that's the perfect description. And he's still kicking butt and doing a great job. So.
Just a man with a gun. Just a man with a jetpack. And they make me take it off several times in this series.
Wow.
I don't know why.
Man, Melvin, you're still in my... Wait till we get the spoiler cast. Wait for it, man.
I want to revive a general thought that we had during our pre-show kind of show notes stuff, where this series felt like a video game. So I just started playing through The Outer Worlds, which is Obsidian's latest RPG. I don't know if it's latest. I think it came out last year, maybe. I don't know. Well, actually, if this is uploaded, this will be uploaded in 2021. It was last year, I think.
Yeah. And
it's very fun, but it has the same aesthetic of you're traveling from different planets and you're just sort of taking jobs as you're trying to complete a main task. And it was neat to watch some of these episodes where Mandalorian was just sort of like has this main quest of taking Baby Yoda to his owners or to wherever he belongs. And he just like ends up on a planet and other side quests show up, but he still has to complete them to get enough money to pay for getting somewhere else or to complete other things. And I think there's something really fun about that sort of Pandora's box that is science fiction where anything can happen, but you sort of have your stable mainline hero on his stable mainline quest. So I just aesthetically, that was something I really liked. Now, as a negative, I thought some of the music, although there was improved music and scoring in this season as opposed to the first, because I think once Disney was like, wait, people like Star Wars, they like The Mandalorian, all they've been doing is hating our movies for the last 4 years. Once they realized people liked it, I think they just started chucking money at it. And you could really see that with season 2, and I liked that. But I think some of the music choices for season 2 were frustratingly dumb. Like I found it distracting in that there's an episode where a Mandalorian meets Mando meets other Mandalorians, and the theme song they gave them is like glitchy, jumpy, irritating, scratchy music. And I was like, this is dumb and stupid, and I hate this. I hate everything about this. And then they do the dubstep meme in a later episode where it's just dubstep music for some guys, and I'm like, this is not 2008. What is going on? I don't understand. So I don't know. Stuff like that is like, let's just accept the fact that Melvin Benson has bad takes every episode of the Cinematic Doctrine podcast. And this is it. This is my bad take, but it is true. Thank you. I'm glad somebody agrees with me.
I was going to say, I haven't seen your podcast episode on Tenet yet, and I can't wait to hear what you felt about that movie.
What my bad take is on Tenet? Oh,
no, just the sound mixing in that one.
Disastrous. But don't worry, I thought Mando had good sound mixing. I just did not like these 2 songs or 2 theme songs basically for these characters. But
That's okay.
That's it. If we had to pick positive and negatives, that's what we're doing. So that's where I'm at.
I'm gonna be fair. I would so much rather that your biggest gripe is about some of the music choices,
Some dubstep,
because that means that like the storyline and the acting and the climactic moments, they were
I loved it. It was a great time.
They were actually good. Yeah.
I thought it was really daring to have this show and this season end like Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which we can get into later, but it has a very similar focus and tone to end it that way. And I thought that's such a daring thing to do with your super high budget production where you're trying to get everybody to keep watching, to just end it with such a somber focus.
When they decided to switch to Muppets for the finale, I didn't know if that was going to work or not.
Wild.
But,
Bravo, Favreau.
Yeah.
Bravo. He said he wanted to channel some Kurosawa with this Mandalorian series, so I just didn't think he was going to do that. Wow.
So, I mean, generally speaking, it was really good. I'm sitting here because while we're sitting here listing positives and negatives, I'm myself trying to think of how would I what are the things I didn't like? What are the things I did like? And for the most part, I am really racking my brain to think of anything that really bothered me. There's just it's this thing of most of the show is not particularly ambitious as far as plotting or structure. It has a pretty set in stone rhythm where each episode Mando goes to a different planet where you meet a different space person who has a different RPG side quest task for him to do. And each episode they do a good job. It felt like they sat down and were like, what's cool things he could do? So all right, what if he went here and had to shoot these people, and the next episode he'll go here and shoot these other people, and then different episodes do different things with architecture and characters and motifs. Episode 5, as has been referenced, there's a lot of Akira Kurosawa in the show. There's shots that are literally lifted from Yojimbo, which for nerds is something that they'll really enjoy. And so I think for the most part that set rhythm is great, but that also means they don't ever do anything particularly daring or risky narrative wise, which means they don't ever really mess up particularly bad. So honestly, I liked all the music, even that weird glitchy dubstep song. I loved most of the action scenes. I think the John Favreau writing 80% of the episodes was a good decision. And as usual, this all-star cast of directors where you got Robert Rodriguez, Carl Weathers got to direct an episode, which is fun.
Yeah,
it was just really solid television. Every week I was excited to see it, which is something that I didn't really get to say most of 2020, where there was this consistent thing I was looking forward to every week for a little bit. So overall, thumbs up.
Yeah, and they had Sam Hargrave, who directed Extraction, also did a lot of fight choreography for Marvel, was brought in to do a lot of the fight choreography for Mandalorian, because I think if I remember from the interview correctly, he was asked from Favreau or somebody to just can you just make it crazier? A lot of the fight sequences. Nice. And yeah, it literally your description of wouldn't it be cool if he goes to this planet and shoots these people? I know you just described so much other more interesting heady things, but when you start with that, that's where I'm going to stay.
It's true though. It was just it's they've had a pinboard and they had different Star Wars characters and aliens. It's just these characters he'll be friends with, these ones he'll kill. And it was great, let's do a season of television, Can you imagine showing up for $1 million job and your boss looks at you and goes, we want to get crazy? You're just okay.
See what you did last time? That was too tame. Go crazy.
We need about 4 more CCs of crazy.
John, you got any positives, negatives?
Spoiler free, not too much. I mean, I liked it.
That's a good thing.
All right.
Yeah,
Positive.
no, I mean, I think I kind of already touched on it before, where I shared that in general, I think Star Wars lends itself to the long form, slow burn of a TV show.
Which is fascinating considering it starts as 3 movies.
Yeah.
Was only started as 1, never intended to have a sequel anyway. And now it's almost it only works in long form.
No, I'd agree with that. I think one of the things, kind of going back to what Daniel was talking about earlier, with Dave Filoni being someone that everyone is like looking to. Like, I was watching an interview with Jon Favreau where he actually said that he'll get a lot of pushback from Dave on his ideas, and ultimately he's like, if Dave doesn't give me the green light, I drop it.
Interesting.
And so the interaction that they have is really interesting.
So I guess we'll go into our spoilers then.
Yes!
So if you're listening and for some reason you have not watched Mandalorian Season 2, why have you not watched Mandalorian Season 2? You got to get around to
listening.
it.
Go
what
watch
else
it.
are you doing?
Yeah, what else is happening? I mean, we're all stuck at home. COVID-2 Electric Boogaloo started, and we're all stuck at, like, what are we going to do? So watch Mando Season 2. That's a better Season 2 than COVID-2. But other than me just trying to pan out and give you more time to rush to another podcast episode, we're going to finally get into these spoilers. So, Derrick, well, actually, first off, can you guys believe it that it took 40 years for us to see another live action stun ray in Star Wars?
What are you talking about?
In episode 4, they use a stun ray. In episode 4, they use a stun ray on Leia. And then they never use it again. They go right back to shooting red lasers instead of circle beams, blue circle beams. And then in a later episode, they stun Baby Yoda and put little baby handcuffs on him.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about now. That threw me off because when you were saying episode 4, I was thinking of episode 4 of Mandalorian, and then you said Leia, and I'm like, what the heck is this guy talking about?
You didn't see that Easter egg?
Which reminds me that, like, me and Catherine was trying to figure out where this takes place in the timeline. So she's like, is this after episode 3? I'm like, no, episode 6. She's like, but I thought episode 6 was the Sith. I'm like, no, episode 6 is Revenge of the Jedi, or is the Return of the Jedi.
Star Wars
She's like, wait,
sometimes.
but I thought that was 3. I'm like, no, that's the 3rd movie, but that's the 6th in the series. She's like, wait a minute. And so then I had to sit up and I was like, okay, Catherine, let me get out a dartboard. Let me start explaining. It's just but it was,
like, where does the holiday special come in? Yeah.
Oh man, we don't talk about that.
The new one
that's canon now because of Mandalorian. So
yeah, that's true.
It's true. The first episode.
But yeah, they use a stun ray. That is my most significant.
That is what the fans wanted to hear us talk about. Was this.
That is why I listen to your podcast.
Yep.
Do you know when I saw that on the episode? I thought that's my in. That's what I have to say on this episode.
What a rich vein this has been.
That is my contribution.
I don't care about Grogu. I don't care about him eating these things. I don't care about Boba Fett coming back or Ahsoka or Luke Skywalker. What I'm here to talk about is a blue circle beam that came out of a clone trooper's thing.
I like how just right there
you dropped everything.
What did you guys think about that? Yeah, Derrick and John, what are your thoughts on that stun ray?
You know, thinking about that, anytime I hear the word stun ray, it sounds like stingray, and then I get really angry about Steve Irwin's death all over again. So,
I don't
honestly,
laugh, but that is like one heck of a string theory.
To be fair, I actually didn't think of that scene in A New Hope. So
no one but Melvin does.
Yeah, no one did.
Are we surprised?
That's amazing.
I can't believe I've wasted like a solid 6 minutes talking about this.
No, that was well, I'm sure that'll be edited out in post.
I'm keeping all of that. Everything else.
He's gonna lengthen it in post somehow.
Oh man. I mean, if we're like full spoilers now, I think one of the things that I was most excited about was the beginning of the first episode of season 2 when they introduce Cobb Vanth, but he's wearing Boba Fett's armor, and you're like, oh, they're just jumping right into it. Oh my gosh, it's Timothy Olyphant. That's not Boba Fett.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yet they still they brought him back at the end of the first episode, so you actually were like, oh no, they're actually going to do it. Okay, they weren't just being mean and taunting us. And one of my favorite things was when Mandalorian was taking Grogu to the Seeing Stone with the whole Jedi. First of all, he's like, do you see anyone? Or maybe they're supposed to see you. And then he walks around the rock seeing if there's something that he's supposed to do. And I don't know, just his the fact that he doesn't know anything is wonderful.
Yeah,
it's
strong
awesome.
Dad energy.
Yeah, it's major dad energy. We're all about dad energy on Cinematic Doctrine. Bring it up almost every 3 episodes. So.
Boba Fett shows up and he gets in hand-to-hand combat with the stormtroopers and kicks their butt. with a Jawa's staff, or is it a Tusken Raider? I can't remember.
The music and the sound there was really good.
Yeah.
Very Robert
good.
Rodriguez. He loves his violence, and
he
was just having.
He apparently was handed not a half-finished script, and so he just padded the episode with action, is what he said. So he was just like, "All right, let's just do more Boba Fett action." And I was like, "What a great creative direction from Rodriguez."
Yeah, I'd read too that he really liked Boba Fett as a kid, as most everybody did. Him and his ship were just like the cool toy to get, and he wanted more of Boba Fett in the movies, like also everybody else wanted. And so he saw this as an opportunity to make Boba Fett do all the things that he wanted Boba Fett to do. It's just funny to imagine, though, a baby Robert Rodriguez is like, yeah, I want to watch Boba Fett murder some guys. That sounds awesome.
And, dream big, kids. You never know what you're gonna get to do. So.
Yeah, that's perfect.
That's a good takeaway.
That is a good take. I agree.
Oh, so do you want to go to your negatives and positives list?
Oh, sure.
Are you charging up, Derrick? Is it happening?
Derek's about to go Super Saiyan.
No, that was on the...
It's happening.
That was in regards to the Dream Big kids and killing people. Anyways, let's move on.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So I combined some positive and negatives. So one positive is I love this in season 2. I thought Mando's growth and his feelings for the child were genuine. I thought they earned that. And so when the child's taken and Mando's like almost desperate to get him back, I was like, okay, I can see his character doing that. And he's doing stuff that you wouldn't have imagined him doing in season 1, like taking off his helmet. And even the last finale, when he takes off his helmet to say goodbye to the kid so the kid can finally see his face. Like, that was a touching moment. And also, I think it was the same episode where the child was taken. I think that was called The Tragedy. When he does that hollow voice recording to, I forget Giancarlo. I forget the guy's name. Anyways, when he's...
Moff Gideon.
Yes, Moff Gideon. Thank you. When he when he does that message to Moff Gideon saying, "You don't know how much he means to me," that is the same speech that Moff Gideon gives to him in the season finale of the first season.
Right.
And
I didn't know that.
But he switches out. And just stuff like that brings chills up, like, oh, he is serious. He is coming for you. You did the one wrong thing with taking this kid. So I loved all of that. I thought it was great. Just a negative slight challenge. Mando is so desperate to get the kid back, and he's doing stuff, and I think it's all justifying stuff like that, and like taking off his helmet and stuff like that. I just don't want them to go super far into Mando losing even some of his old traditions. I think the situation caused him to update his transitions quickly, especially because of the circumstances. But I think part of what makes Mando a cool character is he has certain things that he tries to adhere to. And so going into season 3, I'm curious what elements will he continue to adhere to and what elements he won't. I don't want him to go fully, give all that stuff away, because then I think that might make him another character. So I don't know. What are your thoughts about that, guys?
You would lose a lot of the drama that we're kind of instilled to expect in The Mandalorian. Like, knowing he has to take off his helmet as an audience member is like, that's a big deal. And so now we're starting to get tense. We're going to get engaged, knowing like when, Timothy Olyphant reprising his acting role from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where he also played kind of a cowboy, but not really. It was an actor playing
he's
a cowboy.
Justified. He's the guy in Justified.
Oh man.
yeah. He's just
I think
that
I only
character
saw the
in
first
space.
like 3 episodes of that show.
It's pretty good.
But yeah, he coming up with the Mandalorian armor, of Boba Fett's armor, and then finding out that he's not a Mandalorian, knowing the creed, or at least Mando's particular creed of Mandalorian. There's drama to that. That's really engaging, and you continue to get that when Boba Fett comes back and is like, I want my armor, and he's well and justified to have his armor. Which, sidebar, I really like when sci-fi stories or even fantasy stories kind of lift up armor or weaponry as like having these like intrinsic values. So like us, when in episode 1 or 2, I think it was 1, when we see Boba Fett's armor, like we get that kind of classic fantasy idea of like, well, like an RPG, that's the rare armor that I want to go find and go put on. So to see that, it's really neat. Anyways, to see him wanting the armor back later in the season, and Mandalorian's like, you can't have it. It's really good drama for like, it's a good story. And if season 3 were to continue to deconstruct Mandalorian's beliefs, because this whole season really was kind of built around that. Like,
Definitely.
when do his beliefs get in the way of like what he has love for and is impassioned for? So like the stereotypical I fight for my friends kind of classic arc, but also for Baby Yoda. I think if it goes too far, yeah, it could be a bummer and we're going to lose some out of it. But I also have faith that it will still be good, if that makes sense, because it's like, so far, I mean, Mandalorian hasn't put out a bad episode or a bad thing that I've really disliked, except for dubstep. But I won't let them live that one down. But
we know where you stand.
I don't want dubstep in my Star Wars. This is not the Amazing Spider-Man 2. I don't need this.
Oh man,
which was clearly improved by it.
Yes,
definitely.
You guys want another one?
Absolutely.
So generally, I think the show is well directed, well written. Disney did a behind the scenes, and just the way, I'm not sure if you guys seen this, the way they film it, a lot of the sets aren't like on location. They build like this, like kind of a building, and they film a lot of it inside, and it pretty much looks like the holodeck. They have these large screens around. It's not even green screens. It's like large screens, and they just change like the inside of the setting. It's crazy. If you guys get a chance, watch the making of. It's great. So I think a lot of it's well acted, well directed, well shot, and well written. Except there were a few lazy forced plot things this season, like when during the tragedy, when the Mando meets Boba Fett, and Boba Fett tells him not to put down his weapon, to put down his jetpack, and they're fighting, and Mando's running back and forth, and he doesn't grab his jetpack. Why? Because he wanted to build tension.
That's
right. At the end, the Dark Troopers come, and he can't reach them in time because he doesn't have his jetpack. I'm like, we could have found a better way. Maybe he was about to fly away, and the lady shot his jetpack, so now it's broken. We could do better than this guy. So
to be fair, they did that. They did that exact thing to Boba Fett in Return of the Jedi, and it's like we all hate it.
I guess I hate it more when there's plot stuff.
He got back. I can't believe it. It's such a meta thing to do. Robert Rodriguez, you king.
He was like, trust me, take off the jetpack. Han Solo's going to accidentally break it. You're going to go into a Sarlacc pit. It's going to be awkward.
He looks directly at the camera. I've had difficulty with those.
The second big offender is when Bill Burr's character, Miggs Mayfield, refuses to put on his helmet for some reason, although every stormtrooper in the world always puts on the helmet. And then he walks in and he sees his commander officer. Of course, he can't go in there because he's going to get recognized. So Mando has to go in there, and he has to stand in front of the worst scanner in the world. Can someone explain the scanner to me? So apparently the scanner doesn't scan your face to see if you should be in there. It just scans to see if you have warrants or something. So all this just so Mandalorian can take off his helmet. We get it. We got you. I just felt like that could have been better written. So there you go.
That confused me watching it. I was like, but if it's going to scan him, it's going to be like, you're not Imperial. And then it's not going to let him access the computer. But I was like, whatever. I mean, I've complained about Star Wars for too long in my life. I need to just accept what I'm watching and just get over it.
That all does lead to one of my favorite scenes in the entire season, though.
Yes. It's set up for a great.
Which one?
Which one? Because I feel like you're either going to say it was him taking the helmet off, or what Bill Burr did.
Well, like Bill Burr sitting there. If I was to sit here and talk about like things I like, is Mandalorian. One of the things it does amazingly well is it makes the Star Wars world feel like a real lived-in place. And so you're seeing a soldier who was there for one of these big space battles, where these were actual human beings that die. Where in Star Wars, you just think there's big explosions, like whole planets get decimated, and it's whatever. But here we see like a guy who's there. This is his D-Day, and so he's talking to his commanding officer about like the cost of war, and you get to see the Empire's philosophy really like rub up against like a person who cares about individuals. And so that kind of stuff is the little bits of magic in Mandalorian, where Star Wars suddenly feels more than just, I don't know, like this
big space battles. And
like Star Wars has always kind of felt a little cheap to me in some ways, where here we see Star Wars as just like this actual expansive universe filled with human beings and characters,
Even another line like that sounds a lot like when they're talking to Boba Fett at the bar, and one of the disses that the character has is like, "I've heard your voice plenty of times,"
which is great because in the Clone Wars cartoon, all the clones have the same voice.
Right.
It's awesome.
Right.
Yep.
It's a really good line, but it's like you think about like this has been how many years since the clones were produced? The war is over, and now there's just clones everywhere who are like if this was an RPG, this is an entire new faction that's just been produced, and all the things. So yeah, but was the scene in particular that conversation, or was
yes,
it
because that conversation wouldn't have happened if they didn't have that whole awkward thing where he needs to take his helmet off and it takes too long, and the whole fact that he's sitting there and the machine's beeping causes that guy to get. I'm okay with kind of semi lazy, semi like forced scenes if it leads to something that has a good payoff. So
yeah,
for the most part, those weird things in Mandalorian lead to things where I'm just like, okay, fine, that's the entry fee for having them have this big shootout, right? To shoot their way out of the cafeteria where there's poor guys holding trays that aren't ready for battle, and you just shoot them all. So
well, and I think there's two things there that I want to touch on. The first is that I loved the just kind of brief payoff, because when they were driving there, Mayfeld kept giving him crap about his personal beliefs, saying, you know, if you grow up in the Empire, you believe one thing. If you grow up on Alderaan, you believe one thing. And so he's giving Mando grief about what he, you know, lives his life by. And then after that scene where they kill everyone, he makes this offhanded comment and he's like, well, now no one's seen your face.
It's great.
And he's like, I never saw it either, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Which that episode was just a really strong one, because not only does Bill Burr make the line about like Empire or Resistance, it doesn't matter which side you are, like you're all the same to these people.
You're
it's
all
just
invaders,
indigenous livers.
Yep.
You're all invaders. And then you even see like when they make it, when they succeed after the pirate attack, everyone's celebrating, and they basically just shot, they pretty much probably directed everybody the same they would as like if the Resistance completed something and the X-Wing just flew back in and everyone's cheering. It's the virtually same scene.
Yeah.
And what's great is because then it kind of breaks down to who's in charge, like who's in charge and what's the ideology behind it. And that's where the fault is. And that's where the misery is. It just brings the kind of much needed nuance that hasn't been engaged in the live action sector of Star Wars, probably since Empire, because Empire has a lot of very good sort of light and subtle lines that really speak to a bigger universe. Return of the Jedi kind of loses some of that because it wants to sell toys, bring back Han Solo, and then you have like, you have your lightsaber at the end, but it's still a good movie, but it kind of loses it. And I just think that that's one of the big positives when it comes out of the season, is that they're really laying better groundwork for saying, yes, this is a world that is lived in. Yes, this is Boba Fett's armor and it's been used. So that when we see it, that it's cleaned off, it's actually really cool.
Right.
I think that's really neat.
Yeah. And it's like, it's interesting because Star Wars' morality has been almost comically black and white, where it's like the Empire, evil Empire, all these like they have all these striking colors, they all look uniform and the same, and like good guys and bad guys are so clearly illustrated. And so here we get to see like the nitty-gritty of it. Or like the first episode is, hey, the Empire fell, but then that just created a power vacuum for a bunch of other bad people to show up and take over this poor town, you know. And like these are the real life fallout of actual war, and now we're placing that onto Star Wars, which I don't know, like I'm going to plead ignorance here. I have not read the Timothy Zahn novels. I'm not an expanded universe person, so I don't know if there's all these great stories that address these things. But as far as like the mainline Star Wars go, this is first we're seeing of that, which I'm sure other people here will be able to speak to better than me. But I will also say that that's a strength of Mandalorian, where it makes canon easy, where they bring in all these other characters from the cartoons and stuff, but they present them in a way where anyone can immediately understand who they are. And it sort of, for fans, it's super cool. For the general audiences, hey, that's Sasha Banks hanging out with some lady. Hey, I know who Boba Fett is. Oh, that's that cartoon lady played by Rosario Dawson. This is cool, you know?
Which is actually, John, I think you wanted to talk about this. Yeah, it's probably the reason why in episode 5, The Jedi, they call, or at the very least, they don't maybe directly call Ahsoka a Jedi, but the reason they just decide to just call her the Jedi is because although in extended canon, it's probably not appropriate to call her a Jedi, to everyone else that's watched only the movies or really just knows about Star Wars, if they have a lightsaber, they're a Jedi. So it doesn't matter.
100%. Yeah.
And so
No,
I wonder if that's one of the reasons why it works so well, is because probably everyone behind the scenes knows, like, we can't spend this episode having her talk about why she can't be a Jedi and the moral quandaries and reasons why she's not a Jedi. For this episode, she just needs to be a Jedi. We got to have our Kurosawa moment, and we need to move forward.
No, I would agree with that completely. I think that the episode is called The Jedi because he's looking for Jedi. He was told there's a Jedi there, and you know, for people who watched the animated show, who like have a lot of investment in Ahsoka and her relationship with Anakin, it was a fantastic episode. And honestly, for someone who doesn't know any of that, it was a fantastic episode.
Yeah, it was good.
And
it's really good.
So I think you know, they've done a really good job of including stuff that is an Easter egg and a wink to people who know all of that, but they've also made it completely accessible to the people who only have seen the movies, and that's okay. And I think that's great. And like, it's a couple small things, like when she's standing behind two guys and she opens her lightsabers against each other.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And like slowly opens them before, you know, flipping out and holding them both. And that's something her character does, and it looks cool on screen, but it's also a nod to everyone who knows.
Yeah.
And I think they did a really good job of balancing that, where it wasn't just fan service that alienated a large group of people. I just think they balanced it really well.
It's accepting that if people do know that these characters have these skills or abilities, they will use them naturally without making them do that and then zooming in and going, see, she's holding the blade backward. No, like in the fight, it's just she lost one blade and now she's like, well, I only have one and I'm going to do what's natural to me. and so it looks normal, but anyone who's watched Clone Wars knows, I've seen her do that plenty of times. That makes total sense because that's her fighting style. Which isn't it so funny that like when Clone Wars started with its animated movie and then the show, people didn't like her as a character, and now it's like,
oh man, they hated her.
Ahsoka's probably like the most loved Star Wars character, just kind of like period. Like,
that's very true.
She's just so good, and I thought she was fine too when the show was out or coming out. I liked her as a character. They needed something happy after episode 3 where it's just dour and depressing the entire movie. So she's a great addition.
Before we get too far away from Mayfeld, just a fun little trivia fact.
Ooh.
Did you guys hear about how Bill Burr got the role?
No,
I did not.
I want to hear it so bad.
Okay, so I can't recommend you listen to his stand-up. It's pretty raunchy. But he is a stand-up comedian, and he actually rips Star Wars pretty commonly. He loves like pointing out the things that don't make sense and goofs and gaffes, and he basically tears into Star Wars for like 5 minutes in about any stand-up routine that he does. And he gets a phone call from Jon Favreau, who's like, hey, you know, you make a lot of money and sometimes you talk crap about Star Wars, but I think it would be hilarious if you were in Mandalorian. And Bill Burr was like,
what a meta
that
joke.
Is hilarious. Exactly. Bill Burr was like, no, that is hilarious. And I will totally be in the intellectual property that I make fun of all the time.
Mock all the time. I'll take your money, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And then honestly, like we were just talking about, that episode is not my favorite, but it's probably like top 3 of seasons 1 and 2 combined, because of just the interactions that we talked about before, that him and the Mandalorian have, talking about beliefs and making, you know, those big explosions, making those real.
Yeah. And I hope they let his character sleep for a bit too. Maybe don't bring it back season 3, but season 4, I think that could be cool. Yeah. Bring it, like, maybe he's off running a town as a sheriff or a marshal, and he's like, if I'm not Empire or if I'm not Resistance, then I'm gonna be my own thing, and his entire town's totally okay until Mando shows up, because everywhere he goes something bad happens. So
I do think that episode had a lot of good payoffs, as Dan was talking about. Like, for his character Mayfield, like, I think the analogy to his D-Day and just there's a lot of lore there behind that. One of my favorite scenes is when Mando's sitting down at the table with Mayfield and commanding officer, and Mando's mask is off, and he's like silently giving him like the shake, like, dude, don't do anything, because
that's right. Yeah,
and just the acting there is amazing. So for me, that was one of my favorite scenes. John had brought up Ahsoka. I think it was great to see her there, because I think there was a ton of fan service. And I to those who know, again, I think this season did a great job with fan service, tying in again the Clone Wars and the Rebels animated shows, which I haven't seen all of, and so it kind of made me want to go and see it. Can I just bring up, this is a positive, one of the coolest things was that we got to see inside a Boba Fett ship and how it rotates, which has been a great mystery forever. And so I thought that was awesome.
Even my wife was like, which way's up and which way's down? She's so confused.
Boba decides.
As soon as the ship showed up, I was like, that's Slave One, right? That's not just another one of those ships. That's actually Slave One, right? And then it was, and I was like, ah!
That's awesome. It was very haunting, because like we know, like it's just such a good use of the fan service. It's how can I put this to my advantage, as opposed to just being things we know. If I have it show up and like, basically we know like Mando's in a precarious situation, Baby Yoda's going to be alone and totally vulnerable, and then Slave One shows up, you're like, oh my, this is bad. This is really bad. And then it was. So anyways, it is impressive.
Well, and when the two TIE fighters started chasing Boba Fett, I just like kind of laughed. I was like, this isn't going to end well for them.
Well, that's like when he's getting fake chased. There's the scene where he has to get fake chased, and then like he just immediately turns around and shoots at them, and then it's just like it's over, it's done. I was just playing along. So, there are two more things that I think we should talk about. One is obviously Luke. That's 100% that should get talked about, at least the CGI part of him. And then also, like I said, I was offline when this Baby Yoda eating eggs thing happened. You guys got to fill me in. What was this? Because like, Daniel, you said you loved it. I watched it and I loved it in the sense of it was amazing, but like, because it was weird. But I was like, this doesn't feel right. What's going on? Like, aren't those like? Isn't that like
who wants to give the down low on this?
I have one funny anecdote, so I'll pass on the lore.
Okay, I'll share. Oh, Dan, you go ahead. I was going to share it. You go ahead.
Okay. The one who loved it, tell us about it, Daniel.
So, for those who are aware, so episode 2 of the season is apparently pretty unpopular for some reason, which I totally disagree with, because it was like an alien movie, but with Mandalorian. I was totally down for that. So
it was definitely the most filler of the season, but it was like really kind of interesting.
I love
it was good though.
I love monsters. I love horror. So I loved watching Mandalorian shoot. And I think there's some actual like good tension where you don't know if the frog lady's going to make it, to be honest with you. She's a disposable character for all accounts. But anyway, solid episode in my opinion. But throughout the episode, the premise is that the lady needs to get to this planet to meet her husband because their species is dying. And she has like the last eggs of their species or whatever. And Baby Yoda, being a baby and of whatever species Yodas are, I don't know off the top of my head.
And already liking to eat frogs because he ate some in season 1.
Established that he eats frogs. Is just eating these eggs every time this poor woman turns her back. So Yoda is basically committing adorable genocide. It's the cutest genocide that you've ever seen, as he's eating these eggs, and Mando keeps us like, stop it, don't do that, which is a very baby thing to do, because babies and like pets, and which Baby Yoda is effectively a mixture of both of those things, will just eat things. The babies put things in their mouths. My cat has pica, so he constantly just chewing plastic. This is just a thing adorable creatures do. But of course, because it's Star Wars, so everyone likes to complain about it for some reason. And because there's just really not much to talk about other than, COVID-19 or the election. People are just like, I am very upset about this fictional baby eating fictional eggs of a species that doesn't exist. This is horrible. And so there was like articles of like, here's why this is actually really bad. And it's one of those things, it's very much like Harambe, where it was like, half the outrage was a joke, so people were constantly just pushing people's buttons online, just like making it worse.
SEO was being manipulated by publications. They were like, if people talk about Harambe, we gotta write an article about Harambe.
Yeah, it's the same thing where it's like the Twitter algorithms picked up the story, and so everyone's got to get their article out real quick because everyone's talking about this Baby Yoda eating eggs.
Everybody's
thing.
getting a Disney Plus subscription. So that they
Like, I need to see the frog genocide committed by a baby. So
that's why the investors call it went so well.
Like,
my sister-in-law was joking, but I remember she texted us that night, and she was like, man, that baby eating the eggs gave me more anxiety than the spiders.
Yeah, it's a great plot device.
That's what Catherine said. She literally said the same thing. She's like, oh, no. I don't know, something about this is like not right.
I'm not saying it's totally okay. I'm not at all saying that's not bad, but it's presented as bad in the show. That's the thing that I feel like people are missing out. And it's part of his character arc.
And he then eats one of the spider eggs, and it unleashes all of the spiders.
Right.
So it's like
perfect storytelling. But yeah, he learns. And the next episode, he sees the hatched egg and he realizes that this is a real being, and he actually likes the creature, and he has to actually get taken away because he wants to hang out with this other baby creature. So it has an actual storytelling device, which I think once the payoff was seen, everyone was just like, oh, okay, whatever. Partially because you saw that the species would live on. So
I just want to share the anxiety that those 2 episodes cost me, because I don't see The Mandalorian as it comes out. I usually wait till it comes out and then binge a bunch of episodes.
I binged it too.
And I heard about the controversy, and I thought it was so much worse than it was gonna be. Like, I thought Baby Yoda,
they built it up to be a big book.
I saw a podcast episode called Baby Yoda is Hitler, and I was like, oh no, what is this season? What is happening?
Yeah, he had a weird thing about Jews in the episode.
Turns out Baby Yoda is actually Snoke.
So like when that episode came up, the anxiety wasn't like that he was eating them. It was like, this is good. There's something worse that's about to happen.
Yes, I thought Baby Yoda ate all the eggs. And then, like, he actually, this is my worry as I'm watching it. I'm like so nervous over the 2 episodes. And just for a disclaimer, it's not good that he ate any of those eggs. But if you take a look, they did survive. The race continues, and you can kind of see how they were playing it as not for gags, but as Dan was saying, part of his growth character. If you look at the episode as it was, then I could see what they're going for. But the internet had me all stressed out watching those 2 episodes. I was a mess. All right.
Yeah.
When Jon Favreau met up with Sam Hargrave and was like, I want to do something crazy this episode. This is what he had in mind.
I just want to say one thing. I want the listeners of this podcast to hear me. The Frog Lady does not exist.
Yes.
And Frog Lady cannot hurt you.
It's science fiction.
Guys, I love Frog Lady. I thought she was a great character. She was really adorable.
It was really sweet.
She's one of the most sympathetic characters in the whole show.
Seriously,
she just wants to meet up with her husband, and it was a genuinely emotional moment where her and her husband just squawk at each other or whatever and run towards each other. It was great. It was legitimately emotionally satisfying.
I loved it. Bravo, Favreau. I can't believe it. How does he do it?
Yeah. Can't believe they're getting their own spinoff.
Are we going to see some Halloween costumes of like Grogu with like the Frog Lady's stats?
Yes, we are. That's going to be the new Halloween and Christmas dish, just frog eggs.
That's
this year's Ken Bone costume. It's the gag costume I'm gonna have.
That's all right.
Can we talk about Luke Skywalker in the season finale now?
These transitions, Derek.
Okay. He eats no eggs, so
let's do this.
So
Luke Skywalker is the opposite of problematic.
Yeah, there's going to be a retcon where like the whole fallout of Episode 8 is because Baby Yoda ate some eggs or something. Luke lost his mind. I saw what Baby Yoda could do.
So yeah, I really want to see Baby Yoda meet Adam Driver. That's what I want.
Why not? They could.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
What if his death is what makes him evil or something?
Okay, so leading up to the finale, wondering who the Jedi was going to be that shows up, I think for the most part, all of us were probably thinking, okay, it's after Episode 6. the sequel trilogy already set up the fact that Luke is trying to rebuild the Jedi. So
Right.
Luke is the person showing up makes the most sense. But was there any other Jedi that you were considering that you thought might show up?
Good question.
I know that since Episode 3 has a cut scene where they kill one of the Twi'lek Jedi, and so since it was cut, it was never canon. And then George Lucas made the Force Unleashed video game where the Twi'lek Jedi, I forget her name, she's in a lot of Clone Wars episodes.
I believe it was Ayla Secura.
Yeah, I believe so. You kill her in Force Unleashed. She's not really a Jedi.
Spoilers for a video game.
From like 10 years ago.
My bad.
No,
This
you
was a
keep going.
Star Wars spoiler episode, so we're spoiling all Star Wars. So I was thinking though, like, okay, but Force Unleashed is not canon anymore, so that's why I don't mind mentioning that she dies in that. It's not canon, so I was like, Ayla Secura might still be alive, so I was like, maybe they'll do that. Maybe, I don't know what Darth Maul's up to by this point, so maybe he's not, maybe he's neutral, or I think he's like a bounty hunter. I don't know. I don't even know if he's still alive. I know he is in like Rebels, but anyways. So, but I was kind of thinking like, are they going to do Luke? Because like, I think it'd be cool to see old Mark Hamill. Maybe they'll just do a little bit of makeup, which you can see how surprised I was when they did not do that.
Well, they went full Paul Walker, yeah.
Super,
Paul
yeah,
Walker.
it was very Paul Walker. It wasn't very good. I didn't like the CG. I wish actually it was just older Mark Hamill. If they pulled a Defy Bloods where if they're just going to have a younger version of the character, they just have the old actor be that character as opposed to doing, because if you can't afford like Irishman level de-aging, it's really bad. I find de-aging so frustrating, except for in The Irishman, and that's literally because the like 200 million budget was for the de-aging. So I don't know. As a concept, though, I don't know who they were going to bring back, but Luke being that young was not on my mind.
I think for me, I was open to whatever. I feel like sometimes the Jedi Sith war gets circular and like who's alive, who's not, who died at Order 66 or whatever that thing, Order 66. Like sometimes I get confused in
I
it.
pull out my chart over here and I try
Exactly.
to
I'm
going
gonna need a flow chart. Some people were talking about Mace Windu, that they might still bring him back because he got Force lightning off the ledge, but we don't know what happened to him. So I honestly did not know. Part of me was hoping for a Jedi that we've never met before, because I thought that would have been interesting, but I'm okay with it being Luke. I do agree. I thought the CGI worked well when he wasn't talking. I think when he started talking, that's when they did it. But one of the things I'm happy about is we know Mark Hamill was not happy with the character arc for Luke in the sequels. So I thought this was kind of a good redemption for Mark Hamill and for Luke.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of good anything. My only other concern is that because of sequels, we know things don't end spectacular for Luke. So what's going to happen to Grogu going forward? So, but we'll see.
Yeah,
that could be really interesting. So if speculation wise, it could be interesting if one of the later seasons is Mando goes back to like save Grogu from what's going on. Could be really interesting.
There you go.
And maybe the whole series ends with like he just doesn't like the Jedi, which is fine. He didn't know who the Jedi were anyway in the beginning. So, and that could be interesting because we still have a fair amount of time probably before, because Daisy Ridley's character, what's her name?
Rey.
Yeah, Rey isn't born yet. She's born like 7 years from the events of this movie. So you can kind of assume Adam Driver's character is born roughly the same time later too. So we got a lot of time before that.
And you bring up a good point, Melvin. I'm wondering what season 3 will be like, where they're going to go with Grogu, because it's cool that he's developing his Force powers, but as we were talking about earlier in the non-spoiler version, again, I'm always concerned about power creep. One of the things I love about the season finale was Mando going ham on the Dark Trooper, and like that was a fight.
Just one.
Like was a fight. Like I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know if he can pull this out. And like for him to fight so hard just to kill one, to me that was great, because it shows like, oh, these Dark Troopers are a threat. And then when they start marching towards Luke comes in, and it's a cool scene. Don't get me wrong, but he like snaps his finger and they're dead. And so
Yeah.
just at Mando Season 3, I just don't want Grogu to, hopefully they still bring back Grogu. That was another concern that people have. But I don't want his power level to be at Luke Skywalker's power level, because then I think that kind of ruins it. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
That's why I think it's such a great thing where that we constantly see Baby Yoda just fall asleep after doing something powerful. First off, it's very cute. But second, it's like a good way to sort of limit what he can do in a scene, so it doesn't become too much of a Deus Ex Machina. But
yeah, it's kind of like Stranger Things when 11 would do like one thing and then her nose would bleed and she would pass out.
I think it's a good in-universe limitation.
I'd rather they fall asleep than the nosebleed thing, because that's what everything does. I mean, what is it?
It happened in Wonder Woman.
4. Yeah, it happened. Did it happen in Wonder Woman?
It basically happens in Wonder Woman, not the nosebleeds, but
but it's like, it's sort of the thing that they keep using.
Yeah. So there's one thing I want to say to that, Derek, about Grogu is when Ahsoka was there and she shared, his name's Grogu, and she kind of did a bit of an expository dump for the audience. She said that he had been trained at the temple for years before Order 66. So unless there's a big time jump in Season 3, I don't think an extra few months with Luke is going to suddenly break through him to being like an amazing Jedi Master. So if they did that, it really wouldn't make sense. And in the same vein, though, remembering that this show takes place right after Episode 6. The Empire has just fallen.
About 4 years, I think.
Yeah, about 4 years. Watching Moff Gideon's face when he realizes that Luke has arrived, the guy who killed the Emperor, who, as far as they know, the guy that killed Darth Vader, he was terrified. So terrified he tried to kill himself.
Yeah.
Right? Rather than let Luke catch him. The parallels, like that scene where Luke was tearing through the Dark Troopers, there was a moment, there's like one Dark Trooper left in a certain room that he's in, and as he's leaving, he kind of flicks his lightsaber behind him to deflect a bolt away, which is something that Anakin did in Revenge of the Sith when he was on Mustafar killing the Separatists. So it was like a little nod to that.
Except this time they have like really happy, amazing music going on. Even though it's like, if they just had like people in there, he would just be obliterating a bunch of dudes. It's like poetry. It rhymes.
There was this GIF that I saw afterwards where someone took the final scene of Vader in Rogue One and put it right next to Luke in the finale, where they were both going down the corridor, and it was like a gorgeous homage to that scene as well. It was cool.
Murder. It's glorious.
It's beautiful murder. It's also robots. It's also
Luke is killing robots. So. Yeah, Luke's killing robots. Well, and that the final robot he kills, he force crushes.
Yeah.
Which isn't a Jedi thing. So it was just, I don't know, it was really intriguing to me.
To get my little Jedi picks in here, so I also kind of thought it would be Mace Windu to an extent, just because Samuel Jackson has such a good relationship with Disney, so he would have been a really good pull for them.
What if he just shows up, but he's
he's Nick Fury.
He's just Nick Fury.
Multiverse,
or he's Jules from Pulp Fiction and just starts shooting people.
Moff Gideon's like, what?
He's never seen an afro before.
They don't allow afros in the Empire.
So I would have loved also if it had just been another Jedi, but with a famous actor. So imagine if Chris Pine had been a Jedi, or Tilda Swinton, or just a cool big name actor.
Yeah. Oh, Tilda Swinton would have been great.
That would have been sick.
So good.
Yeah. I never even considered that, but I 100% support it.
Please. Disney, who I know listens to this podcast.
They did.
But
definitely.
I kind of thought they might pull also, because the part of the thing for Mandalorian is they pull in all these disparate elements. I thought we might see Ezra from Rebels or something, because Thrawn was mentioned in the season.
Yeah, I thought that was my thing. Mace and Ezra were the two people I was thinking as well. Yeah.
Or I thought it'd been cool if they got the character from Jedi Fallen Order, who is played by Cameron Moynihan, who's like a real person and actor. So I thought that'd have been a really cool pull to pull like a video game character with an actor they could have portrayed.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment that they mentioned the Jedi, my wife was like, "That's Luke Skywalker. It's going to be Luke Skywalker." And I was like, "I don't know. Like he's so old now." But she was right the whole time. And so there's a part of me that was in my head was like, it's going to be Luke because my wife's always right for some reason. But
you see the X-wing coming up and you're like, it's not going to be Luke. I know it.
It's Wedge antlers, you know.
That's what it is. Yeah, it's definitely Wedge. Yeah, no, when the X-wing showed up, I was like, okay, that's got to be Luke. But then they tease us with the first couple shots just being on the black and white security camera. So you don't really know. And then there's a green lightsaber, and it's all
like,
okay.
It's over at that point.
Yeah.
All my bets are off. Right.
I think Mace Windu would have been really cool, especially if that led into finding out that maybe Mace Windu had survived and was helping Luke rebuild the Order. That would have been awesome. And I'm reminded of a tweet from like 8 years ago where someone was talking about Revenge of the Sith, and Samuel L. Jackson hopped in and was like, "Yeah, I think Mace Windu probably survived the fall." I don't know if George Lucas's tweets are canon or not, but George Lucas said, "That's fine with me."
Why not?
Why not?
Didn't they give Mace Windu a purple lightsaber because Samuel L. Jackson liked it? So it seems like they had a good relationship. So
why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Why not? He went ahead and made Jar Jar the key to everything, so why not? Let's just let him. Jar Jar's the key to all this. The Gungans.
I still love the theory that Jar Jar was the original like Sith bad guy, and after the poor reaction to him in Phantom of the Menace, they scrapped it and didn't know what to do with his character.
He's the key to all this. In the words of George Lucas.
That's one of the things I will say. If you haven't watched Clone Wars, dear listener, it really does a lot to make me like Jar Jar a lot as a character. I feel like he comes off so much better in the Clone Wars cartoon than in anything else he's in. But I also think one of the things I'm wondering is if they're trying to position Baby Yoda as like a new franchise character that's going to eventually show up in movies.
Maybe.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel like they might be like positioning him that way.
It's possible. He's going to be alive for maybe 900 years.
Yeah,
so
and he's
not?
A puppet, so like they don't have to worry about actors aging out of it or worry about what he'll look like. Or
they don't have to CG revive him or de-age him. Just make a new puppet.
Or Baby Yoda's not going to ask for more money. You know, he's just going to always be around. They just keep
adding new puppet characters, and then at some point, all of it's puppets, so they don't have to pay for like the licensing for somebody's face.
Yeah, I wasn't kidding when I said the finale went to Muppets, guys.
That's going to be the thing that like 10 years from now, everyone's going to look back and be like, John got it right.
He calls it. That guy. He knows Star Wars.
Yeah, Muppets was the end game.
So I guess one last thing is, we are definitely going to see more Mandalorian. Where do you think this series is going to go? Speculation time.
I will say I think we're going to get very little Grogu in season 3 because the show is called The Mandalorian, not The Mandalorian and the Baby. And I think that it's pretty much I would be surprised if season 3 didn't almost entirely revolve around probably Bo-Katan hunting Mandalorian,
getting
she wants the Darksaber.
Yeah,
it's all about Mandalore now. And I love how Mando like just stumbled into being the rightful ruler of Mandalore.
And he like doesn't want it. He's like, I don't care.
And he doesn't want it. He's like, I yield. And that look in Bo-Katan's like, nah, I'm gonna have to kill you.
Yeah, they're enemies now. I actually think Baby Yoda might be involved more because Giancarlo Esposito's still alive. We know that they've been siphoning Baby Yoda blood for the midichlorians. Probably they'll never say midichlorians in this entire thing. Dave Filoni knows better. Although Clone Wars did mention it, like in I think 3 episodes.
Well, Moff's assistant did reference the M count.
Yeah,
he said M count. Yeah.
Oh, okay. He said M count, and they did collect some of the blood. I know that Gideon did say like we got what we wanted. Who cares? Which I thought would have been a really interesting development if he just let Baby Yoda go. Actually, in that point, I thought that would have been an interesting plot choice, but of course they don't do that because they need him to get the blade. Anyways, I suspect we'll see maybe more Baby Yoda because that plot line still needs to be carried through. Thrawn, we know, is a collector of ancient things, which is most definitely connected to the Mandalore plot line we're going to continue. But he might also be interested in Baby Yoda as an ancient species of which the people have only known like 3. Yoda, Yaddle, and now Grogu.
That's very true.
And so I suspect he could be in it more, but I also agree that we're going to see probably the entire show revolve around getting Mandalore back and maybe just people popping in like they have been throughout the entire series.
I like it.
Where are you at, Derek? What do you think's going to happen?
I think I agree with that. And as John was saying, that I think they set up the fight over Mandalore pretty heavily there. So I definitely think that is going to be the story arc that we follow. I think it's going to be interesting. I think Baby Yoda is so popular. If they don't feature him prominently, I think that might actually, right or wrong, be to the detriment of the series. We'll have to see if the writers respond to that. I think just my hope is that the series doesn't get too dark. I think that's a trend in TV as we go through series that subsequent seasons usually get darker. And there was one moment that, and again, this is Mandalorian, this is Star Wars, stormtroopers are falling over a dime a dozen. So it seems weird, but in the season finale, like Mando like chokes out a stormtrooper, and it struck me as like, that's a little visceral.
Moff Gideon tries to shoot himself. Episode 5 has torture. There's a lot of a guy gets his face blasted off, and it's like a portrait shot of his face, like in the beginning of the last episode. I completely understand what you're saying, Derek.
I think the reason that we see that trend is they get the feeling that they have to keep one-upping the danger and one-upping the threat, and so it gets weary and it gets dark because I think they get into this loop of thinking the stakes have to get higher and higher and higher. And I mean, we saw that with Marvel. Each phase, the stakes got more and more and more. And
So
I mean, what are we going to do after
Yeah.
Thanos? I mean, we're probably going to see Galactus or whatever. But where do you go from there? And how do you even portray that on a movie? I have no idea. So
I think that's a good explanation, John. I think I don't want them to lose what made Mandalorian so special, and it's all the stuff we've talked about, all the stuffs. But again, for me, it was this lone character trying to take care of a child. And again, that's going to evolve and it's going to look different in season 3. And that's fine. I understand that. But I don't want it to go darker because I feel like because Baby Yoda was so cute, like families are starting to watch this together. So again, it's Disney and it's Star Wars. They probably won't go super duper dark, but even some of the Anakin stuff and like the prequel stuff is like, so that's just my only concern. But back to the original question, I think John's probably right. I can see them. I can see why Grogu wouldn't be in it as much. But again, I wonder how the fans will take that. So
Yeah. How about you, Dan?
So I think they might try and experiment to see how much they can get away with a show without Baby Yoda. Because I feel like season 3 might be like a testing of the water season to sort of see where to take the rest of the show. That is, of course, unless secretly Filoni and Favreau have like a 10-year plan that we just don't know about or something. But I think I wouldn't surprise me if they went with like almost like a dual narrative thing where they would periodically cut back to Baby Yoda training or something, where you could just focus on a shot of him trying to lift something. You don't even have to have Mark Hamill or anything in the shot, and sort of treat him like a reward for the audience. So it's just like, don't worry, he's still there, while you have this other narrative where with Mandalore and all this other stuff going on. I'm a little worried in the sense that, like what you guys are saying, like they might try and top themselves, but less in terms of violence and more in terms of stakes. Because like you were saying, it's the Western. You just see a drifter walks into a town, he punches up whoever the bad guy in town is, and then he leaves. And that's what I love about the Mandalorian, where I don't want this big narrative where he's trying to like recreate a planet or take on Thrawn or something. I like that as background, where you get the sense that this is a normal person who's just a bounty hunter who's stuck, and there's all these other big destiny-like things that he just doesn't care about, which having a child to protect really grounds the narrative in that. So I'm a little worried that they may lose, like we're talking about, lose what kind of the show is really ultimately about. So I wouldn't surprise me if they have the dual narrative thing, and then the last like 2 episodes or something, he gets reunited with the kid, or like what we were almost talking about, where something bad is happening, and so he has to go save the kid, and that's on season 4, where it's like, hey, don't worry, you're getting a lot of Baby Yoda in season 4. So after teasing people for one season, they guarantee it for a next season to keep you watching. But this is all speculative. But
yeah, I think that's pretty likely.
Yeah.
And to top it all off, the thing that we all really hope and love is that Baby Yoda gets a tiny little Yoda-sized lightsaber and does a lot of flips and fights people.
Dude, he was so in those little handcuffs. That was adorable.
Yes,
I know it's supposed to be scary.
Yeah.
It was like, I was laughing.
His tiny hands are too small for his tiny handcuffs.
Yeah.
when they, I feel like if I was the stormtrooper, okay, and Moff Gideon tells me to put him in handcuffs, I'm going to be thinking, we have baby handcuffs? Are we the bad guys?
Why were you prepared for this situation?
Why exactly? Why do I have handcuffs for a baby? Maybe that would be my, FN 2187 moment.
Or he thinks, man, I hate when we have to handcuff babies. I wish we did this less.
That's if they had Taika Waititi direct the episode.
The baby handcuff.
What was it? Taika Waititi is doing something with Star Wars.
He's gonna do a
so is everyone
movie or something.
Yeah, everybody's doing Star Wars.
That'd be dope.
I think it's a movie. Yeah,
Can't remember.
Like Patty Jenkins is doing a Star Wars thing.
Can I say my favorite Baby Yoda? I think it was this season. It might have been like the first episode when the Mando, I think it was like in a fight ring or whatever. Anyways, the Mando's about to like kill some people, and he has those like mini rocket things, and he arms them.
Yes.
And Baby Yoda like quickly hits the button so his cage closes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I miss the baby carriage so much.
It's like whistling birds.
Yeah,
whistlers
or something. Yeah.
Oh, and those were designed to look like an arrowhead because Dave Filoni worked on Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yes, he was director on first season. So
thank you so much, guys, though, for coming onto the show. ShatterCast. Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. It was just a real blast. So good to not just talk about Mando, but catch up with you guys too. ShatterCast, where can people get connected to you?
Probably our YouTube channel is the best. YouTube.com/Shatter Studios. Also on Facebook, Facebook.com/Shatter the Darkness. Also our website, shatterstudios.net.
Yeet.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having us on. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Thanks so much for checking out this episode of The Mandalorian Season 2. And thanks so much, Derrick and John, for joining us on this exciting and entertaining episode. Be sure to check out ShatterCast wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed this episode, consider leaving a review for the podcast in your respective podcast app at the end of this episode. We'd love to hear your thoughts and reviews on iTunes and Podchaser. It means a lot to us. You can also send an email to cinematicdoctrine@gmail.com. And as mentioned before, Cinematic Doctrine has a Patreon. For as little as $3 a month, you're opted into a once-a-month movie poll where you decide a movie we discuss in the podcast. And you also gain access to The Pre-Show, a Patreon-exclusive podcast series where we casually talk movies, Christianity, and life itself. There are other unique benefits that come with supporting the podcast, so be sure to check that out at patreon.com/cinematic doctrine. Special shout out to those who supported the Art House Theater tier on Patreon. Thank you so much, Mom, Dad, Melanie, Shirley, and Thomas. You guys are the best, and your continued monetary support is greatly appreciated. Until next time, stay cool. Want some Cinematic Doctrine swag? You're in luck! We've got 3-inch Cinematic Doctrine logo stickers exclusive for Patreon supporters. Perfect for your travel mug or laptop. Head over to patreon.com/Cinematic Doctrine, link in the show notes, and choose the Independent Theater tier. Doing so will net you other perks too. But let's be real, the podcast stickers are the coolest perk. So get yourself some podcast stickers by supporting on Patreon.